Okay, so today it's in the 50s. Let's see how our cold start's looking like. Okay, so that tells me that there's probably not enough fuel to get it started when it's cold. All right, so I've added some more fuel. Let's see if that makes it any better. Oh. Okay, so we added some more fuel. It looks like afterstart's a little bit on the wonky side, but it's definitely there. So it definitely needs some more fuel. Cold start enrichment could be also a bit better. So let's add some right here for afterstart. Afterstart's really hard because it only happens like literally after starting, like after a couple seconds of it actually firing up. And we're going to work on our warm-up enrichment a little bit more here. Let's kind of do that number. Okay, so that's a bit better, I think, right off the jump. So now we'll get it up to op temp. So cold start Excel enrichment is also very wonky. Not a big deal though. All right, so playing around with the cold start or the cold Excel enrichment is a bit better. It's still a little boggy down low. I mean, that's to be expected. So what we're trying to do is just trying to get it where it's good enough. When we actually start to go tune it, we'll turn off Excel enrichment and actually tune the fuel table first. Then we can go back and do that. But you run it enough where it's just not going to fall flat on its face. So we are actually almost at that point where we're ready to tune this thing. So I'm going to let it come up to op temp and make sure that the fans are working like they're supposed to, and then we'll start cleaning everything up, and then hopefully we can get a couple dyno runs in here shortly. So overall, the car does seem to run better, but you can see that, like, if you listen to the dyno run, you can actually hear that it's losing sync. As you can see, the RPMs are kind of jumping right here a little bit. And that could just be from the noise table. It could be a lot of different things. We're going to try to smooth that out. So right now, all I was doing was just trying to get it dialed in terms of, you know, a decent running car, basically. So there's obviously a lot of the down low stuff has to be done while you're cruising along, but so far so good. We're gonna try to play around with that noise table to see if we can get anything to change in the higher RPMs. Maybe not. No promises there, but we're gonna give it a shot. Before we go into the dyno results, I do want to tell you guys that you will have to take these numbers kind of with a grain of salt. And the reason is that I have a smaller cradle dyno here, as you can see. I don't have a large roller, but the reason is that I have an eddy brake. Some parts of the world they call it like a retarder, but basically this provides load to the rear wheels. So it's like basically resistance of the rear wheels. Now, with that being said, any car that's like below like around 100 horsepower, give or take a little bit, even 150, I actually have to run them without the eddy brake. And the thing is that even with the brake powered on, there is some resistance against it. And what happens is that it skews the number like disgustingly with a little bit of load. And so what I mean by that is that you could take a car that has, let's just say, proven 150 horsepower, and we just turn on the brake without actually adding any duty cycle to it. You can see that those numbers will drop 20% just because of that additional weight. Or the additional resistance of it. So like I said, I would say my dyno is relatively accurate, but it's not as accurate for cars that make way less power. All right, so here are the results. If you look at the top here, that is the average from the main 3 runs from when the car was still carbureted. And you can see that the torque was about the same, but the horsepower is completely different.
And these runs right here, so the EFI runs are not the average runs yet. The average runs were 73 and 78, so I need to sit down and do the software so it can average it out for me. So we'll just say 80 horsepower basically. So it's a vastly improved jump. As you can see here, that the differences are clear. So the thinner of the two is the EFI run, and then the thicker of the two is the carbureted runs. So there is a bit difference there in power. There is more room on the table in terms of what power goes for, but the reason why I can't really do that is actually because of our wideband setup. So currently on the back of the dyno, as you can see, the wideband is ran through the Innovate deal, and this works okay, but it's not perfect because there is a latency obviously from the front of the motor to the back, and then because of how like this being completely open, it actually doesn't get like a super accurate air fuel ratio. So even in the data logs you can see that the AFRs jump around quite a bit, even in the logs, and it's not noise because I can see it on the gauge and it matches up perfectly. There's, again, like I mentioned earlier, there is noise on the data log from RPM from being a fuel only setup. So this is even with noise filtering upgraded here, or updated to be higher. And if you look at the RPMs, you can see that it does jump around a bit. Is it crazy? Not really. As you can see, it's also smoothed out quite a bit more in comparison to like our first initial runs. So it's gotten a lot better. I don't think there's really any more I can smooth out. Well, I guess I could really, but I don't really want to. So these values here for the noise has gone up almost threefold. So it's gone up quite a bit. We can go up a little bit more, but I really don't want to. And honestly, the truth of the matter is that even though you can see the waves in it, when you're actually on the dyno doing the pull, it actually doesn't feel it. So if you don't feel it, I would say just leave it alone. So as far as 93 octane goes, I would say that we are done. So in terms of these results, this is purely fuel only. So we are still running the 123 distributor. I did not want to add any ignition timing to it, only because I wanted to keep it as even as possible. And so the only way to do that really is leaving ignition timing alone. So with the manifolds and the fueling updated itself, these are our gains. Now, what I would like to do, I would like to go sit down and redo it and then start adding timing to it and then just see if we can add any more power. With the wideband, the way it's working and how it's not perfect, I think we can just leave that alone. The air fuels are a little bit fat, but leaning it out a little bit more may yield a little bit more power. But I mean, we saw a huge increase already, and I don't really think that there's any more to really be done here. Okay, so now that we've got that done, we're gonna go ahead and start pumping fuel out of this. We got our old friend Greg here, who we hadn't seen him in a million years. So we're gonna run that all out into our canister until it runs out, which it sounds like it's almost out already. And then we'll fill it up with E. All right, so we pumped out the remaining fuel in the Datsun, and we've got about 5 gallons of ethanol, so we're gonna go ahead and fill this thing up. All right, so we got ethanol in the tank, and now we hooked up the fuel line already. I've already made some quick adjustments here to the tables, so we'll see if we can get this thing to fire up once we check our ethanol content, as long as the computer wants to wake up here. All right, so it's running pretty bad. Obviously, it's not going to be anywhere remotely good just yet. So let's just see where our ethanol content ends up at. Now, do keep in mind that yes, ethanol does kind of add a little bit of power, but that's not what we're really shooting for on this car. We really just want to have ethanol protection, really, is what it comes down to. You know, these older cars aren't really designed for ethanol content. So now we're just going to let it run. We'll let it do its thing for a little bit here just to see, and we'll start playing with the ethanol fuel tables here, and then just pray that we get something that's decent. On initial start, it actually is not so bad. I mean, the car is, you know, been warmed up. I've probably been gone for about 30 minutes or so, but as you can see, it's actually running pretty decent on ethanol. Definitely not perfect, but not too bad.